Hi, this is Chris and welcome to The Compulsive Hobbyist. This is a video I've tried to record a couple of times now. This is actually my third attempt. And part of the reason for that is I didn't know going into this what it was going to take for me to learn and record the bass part for Cakes the Distance. If you haven't seen the videos leading up to this, this is just one out of a series of videos where I'm picking apart the song part by part in an attempt to learn it and record it and ultimately mix a really a direct copy of the original song as close as possible. And as close as possible includes original instrumentation, original tempo, original everything. I mean, it's a note by note copy. It's not an artistic re-rendition. It is a copy, and or as close a copy as I can get. And I am not a bassist, so or at least not yet. I've only done a little bit on the bass. This is my first attempt with two-finger bass, but this is how we learn. So if you've stumbled on this video looking for a tutorial or an expert lesson, I'm not pretending that that's what this is. I will say, however, that I think at least one aspect of how I'm going to play this is going to probably be a little bit more correct than the tutorials that you're likely to find. And does that matter? No. It doesn't matter at all because there's no right way to play any piece of music. But since I am trying to really do a note-by-note copy, it is kind of important to me to learn how the original musicians played the song because only because, not because it's the right way, but because if they were able to do it, I'm interested to know how they were able to do it. And then ultimately I may accept or reject the way that they played. So for example, if I try to play Jimi Hendrix, I'm not going to try to play left-handed. I may try to play with my thumb wrapped around, or I may not. The same with the way I play this. I'm trying to at least use the way the original bassist, or at least the way I can, as far as I can tell, the original bassist played the song as a starting point. But in the end, what matters is, does it sound right? And whether or not I reach that goal is ultimately for the listener to decide. I don't expect that I'm going to come out of this with an absolutely perfect reproduction, but following the goal of not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good, I'm just going to try to settle, at least for now, for good and hope that that's good enough. Ultimately, you can be the judge. We'll see how close I get. That enough said, I'm going to cut over and do the rest of the demonstration at the workstation. So we will see you there. Okay, so we're back here at my workstation looking at my DAW Cakewalk, and we have a bunch of tracks here, most of which at this point I have recorded, some of which are still the original imported tracks that I brought in from Ultimate Guitar, from their online tab player. And most of those are muted out at this point because I've replaced them with the versions that I've copied. With the exception of the bass part here, which you can still hear. So if before we start in here, I'm going to bring the metronome up and let's just listen to it with the imported drum track and the imported bass track. There's no vocals yet. I've deleted the imported vocal part because that was basically just some bleeps. But what we've got here is initially some dead air. And then the bass part kicks in before the drums kick in. And then here come the drums. So even with the metronome, I've found that part to be a little tricky when learning the bass because you've got to really hit that rhythm. And And even working with the metronome, it's you just got this click, 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 and you've got to start in with this. I'll try it like that cold, just to give an example of where I was having a little bit of difficulty, and then we'll see how I kind of worked around it. So I'm going to initially I've got a lot of tracks here. So I've got a bass part here ready to go. What I've got is I've got a little bit of a noise gate to reduce some background hiss, because the fact that I'm playing right next to my workstation does put off some electronic noise. I've got a compressor. I've got amplitude, which is set to a GK amp, bass amp, playing through a virtual 15-inch. Is that a 15? No, it's a 1x12, 12-inch speaker in a virtual, padded sound room. And from there, I've got an EQ set to a bass preset, and I'm going out to my room bus where I've got just a little bit of a reverb to try to give it a little bit more of a 3D-ish effect. And that's it. And from really just trying to go for that kind of dull sound from the original album. So why don't we switch to that just to kind of get reoriented here.
The turns, they're churning and burning, they yearn for the cup.
And I probably need to bring that level up a little bit. It just seems a little bit too low. So I can actually bring it up on my audio interface here. Yeah, you can see we've got some static issues going on there. So I'm going to quickly adjust my noise gate here. And that's part of the problem with having electronic gear around where you're recording. I've got a laptop here. I've got a desktop computer or a mini tower on the floor. So there's probably room for improvement on my workstation setup. But anyways, again, this is just a learning exercise. So I'm not going to try to sell this. And if I did, I don't think I would have any buyers. But that's okay. So before I demonstrate trying to play along with the music, I'm just going to do a quick demonstration of this first part here. This is the verse section, and it also repeats through the beginning of the chorus. And it's this sequence here. And it's just this sequence here, followed by open E. And so the way I figured out that it works for me, and I'm not saying this is the right way to do it. I don't think it's a wrong way to do it. But generally you'll see people saying, okay, for two-finger bass, you're going to start your initial pluck with your index finger. And you want to kind of strictly alternate left, right, left, right. And what I've seen is that certainly when you're going up the scale, you want to alternate left, right. When you're coming down the scale, you have a couple of options. You can still alternate left, right, or you can rake your fingers over the strings. So what I found works for me is if I was trying to strictly do the left, right alternation, starting on my index finger, it would be index, mid, index, mid, index, mid, index, mid, index, mid. That's hard. When I got up to speed, though, or when I was trying to get up to speed, and really trying to stick with that left, right pattern, I was kind of tripping over it. But what worked better for me is starting with my middle finger. And this is I've been doing some reading online. Again, I'm not a bass player, but This is a valid personal choice. And what I'm seeing people say is that, once you get used to playing two-finger bass, your fingers eventually kind of decide. You're not sitting there making an active conscious decision that, okay, I must start with this finger or with this finger. You'll kind of find what works for a given stretch, or so they say. What works for me for this particular part is to start with my middle finger, and then when I'm jumping down to the open E, I'm going to rake down. So it's mid, index, mid, mid, index. And then I'm muting at the end of it. I've seen people mute it up here, and that's what I was trying to do at first, but I found it's actually a little bit quicker I'm just muting kind of with my remaining fingers. And that seems to work. And then I started slow and started working up the speed. And I'm not going to pretend like I can play it with absolute precision and consistency straight through the song without errors. I'm not a professional bass player, but I feel like I can get it close enough and consistently enough that if, even if it takes me a few takes, if I can get a full, section down, then maybe I'm going to have to go in and fix one flub or two, which I will accomplish in the same way that I did the guitar parts, where I'll have a couple of different takes and then pick and choose a couple of sections from the best takes. But I really want to be able to get it to as consistently as I can. Okay, so I'm going to start trying to play this kind of cold without, again, there's no vocals at this point. So that initial part where he starts with, the band starts with the vocal, then the bassist comes in after the vocals, and then the drummer comes in after the bassist. In this case, if I just try to come in with that part cold with just the metronome playing, I find it's hard to do, so I'll demonstrate. I'm going to set it to record, even though it's unlikely I'm going to keep this as a good take. Oops. I came in too early, and I'm going to mute the bass. Import bass. So I'm coming in on, turn off my count in. I'm coming in on the second measure, and I'm going to mute that. Let's try it again. And then I'll be going into the next part. I think I probably didn't do that one that badly. All right. So what I found helped me, and I'll re-record that. But what I found helped me is I just recorded a scratch vocal lead, which is, I won't even call it singing. It's essentially a slow rap. And I found that, so in trying to perform that, I wasn't trying to get it to sound great. I was trying to get it on rhythm or pretty close to the rhythm. And I found that that helped me on that lead in to land it a little bit better. And I'll demonstrate. Again, this isn't the final vocal part. This is just a placeholder. Reluctantly crouched at the starting line. Engines pumping and thumping in time. The green light flashes, the flags go up. Churning and burning, they yearn for the cup. They deftly maneuver and muscle for rank. Fuel burning fast on an empty tank. Reckless and wild, they pour through the turns. Their prowess is potent and secretly stern as they speed through the finish. Okay, I felt I was rushing it a little bit there, and that's a problem that I need to work on. But I found that having that vocal helps me to key in because the vocal is the initial rhythmic part of the song. So reluctantly crouched at the starting line, engines pumping and thumping in time. The green light flashes, the flags go up, churning and burning. They yearn for the cup. So that works. Even if it's not perfect, it's I think it's pretty close. Now we get to the second part here. I'll bring the music over. So this first part. Bump, 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 bump. Pause. And then that repeats until we get down here. And then what we end up with is a quick slide. And you can see I messed that up a little bit. But as I will on the recording. Because I wasn't playing at full speed even, so once I'm playing at full speed, there's definitely some more flubs there. There's no way I'm going to play this note perfect, but I need to get it close enough that hopefully, rhythmically I'm not going to be stepping on anything, because even if I'm not perfectly playing each note, at least if I'm hitting it at the right point, it's less distracting. So if I kind of miss a note a little bit, that's less of a problem. If I'm hitting the rhythm wrong, that's going to stand out. So now I'm going to play through this section here. This is partway through the verse and into the pre-chorus. In through the pre-chorus. And I'm starting at measure 9. And I am going to give myself a count in. And by the way, I prefer to play this through without a break. I stopped here for demonstration purposes, but you can see over here where I did this on my 23rd take, I played through both of these parts straight through, and then I paused going into the chorus and then recorded that in a separate take. In this case, I'm just going to go in and play the second part. Through the finish, the flat. The fans get up and they get out of town. The arena is empty except for one man still driving and striving as fast as he can. The sun has gone down and the moon has come up, and long ago somebody left with the cup, but he's driving and striving and hugging the turns and thinking of someone for whom he still burns. He burns. Their prowess is potent and secretly stern as they speed through the finish. The flags go down. The fans get up and they get out of town. The arena is empty except for one man still driving and striving as fast as he can. The sun has gone down and the moon has come up, and long ago somebody left with the cup, but he's driving and striving and hugging the turns and thinking of someone for whom he still burns. So, as I said, I did not play that perfectly. There were a couple of notes that I just kind of missed. I didn't get my finger down in time, but I tried to keep moving through and playing with the rhythm. And I feel like I'm not too far off there. I will go back and do a couple more passes at this, a couple more takes, and then find the best take. And then if I have to, I'll cut it up a little bit and pick the best parts of the best takes without putting a ton of time into it, because again, this isn't for a professional production. This is just a learning and demonstration process. So let's move ahead here, and we're going to jump into the chorus where we continue with this. We do that for 4 bars. Then we go into a modified part of this part here. Only now we're doing... It's just a variation. Now, so generally when I see this performed on instructional videos, they're going to start up here just like we did in the previous section, maybe with a little bit of an embellishment like, and then they'll drop down. But I went back and watched I believe the second bassist perform it, maybe, I don't know, 5 or 10 years ago with the band. And for this part of the chorus, his hand is actually up here the whole time, and he barely moves it. He's kind of like this. And he had a real conservation of movement. He played it very efficiently. He was moving his hand around. He wasn't going up and down and doing this stuff. So I try to keep it in the same position, again, just for my own learning process. And I don't think I'm playing it exactly the way he did either. What I'm doing is I'm starting here and... So I feel like I have more jumping around with my fingers even than he did. And I think he may also have engaged his thumb here. It was hard to tell, but he might have been doing something like... Maybe, but it was hard to tell. Doesn't really matter though. You know, you need to play it in a way that works for you. And even with the kind of jumping around, I feel like this works well enough. So let's jump in and record this part. So we are at the 18th fret. And I prefer not to have a count in when I can avoid it. So I'm actually going to back it up to about halfway through the 17th fret. So I'm going to give myself a half a measure as kind of a lead in. And again, I'm going to be going between the... and then jumping up to... And let's see how we do. He's going the distance. He's going for speed. She's all alone in her time of need. Because he's racing and pacing and plotting the course. He's fighting and fighting and riding on his horse. He's going the distance. Okay, didn't get that in one take. It took me a couple of attempts, but so that's that. Then we've got... let's see, we finished up around in the bridge, so 26. So we got 2 measures off, 2 measures to take a little bit of a breather, and then we're back in measure 27 with our, so I'm going to, again, I'm going to back it up a half a measure here. No trophy, no flowers, no flashbulbs, no wine. He's haunted by something he cannot define. Bowel-shaking earthquakes of doubt and remorse. The scale and pale him with mustard trying to force. In his mind, he's still driving, still making the grade. She's hoping in time that her memories will fade. Because he's racing and pacing and plotting the course. He's fighting and fighting and driving on his horse. The sun has gone down and the moon has come up. And long ago somebody left with the cup. But he's striving and driving and hugging the turns. And thinking of someone for whom he still burns. Cause he's going the distance. He's going for speed. She's all alone in her time of need. Because he's racing and pacing and plotting the course. He's fighting and fighting and riding on his horse. Racing and pacing and plotting the course. He's fighting and fighting and riding on his horse. He's going the distance. He's going for speed. He's going the distance. Okay, and that's really it. There's a repetition of those three parts, and then we get to the outro, and then we repeat through that initial verse part several times, and then we're done. So really all I need to do is play through this a couple of times, maybe take a couple of takes, and then if I have to, I'll go and pick and choose the best sections. And if you want to see how I do that, I'll refer you back to my guitar recording video where I do that in some detail. I'm not going to repeat it now because I'm really trying to make an effort to make these videos a little shorter and sweeter. So with that, I hope you've learned something from that. If you have, please let me know in the comments. If you haven't, go ahead and let me know in the comments either way, because this is all a learning process for me. And hopefully you get something out of it. If so, I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Remember, we're all learning. No trophy, no flowers, no flashbulbs, no wine. He's haunted by something he cannot define.